Hey guys, this is Miss Martin. This is not going to be a super polished video. I'm not good at those, but I wanted to give you some video instructions with some verbal instructions added just to clarify any points where I thought there might be confusion with the summer reading written instructions. And so over here, you see the document that you guys have access to for your summer reading assignment. Yours will be a PDF. And it's got at the top a link for the two books I'm asking you to order. And so you should just be able to click these two links and it will take you over to the books. Here's what the Poe book looks like. And then here is what the Edith Hamilton book looks like. You don't have to have these specific editions, but I'm giving you page numbers from these editions to help you as you do the assignment, and so it might be helpful if you have these editions. For book one, I'm going to put the link to this video here. But for book one, that's the Poe book, and I've given you a series of 3 videos to watch. One is a biography of Edgar Allan Poe, just so you know a little bit about him. I think that's really helpful in understanding his stories. And then 2 is why should you read Edgar Allan Poe, which is a little TED Ed video. It'll let you in a little bit on the popularity of Edgar Allan Poe and what's good about him. And then video 3 is me talking you through the elements of Gothic fiction and giving you a little bit more instruction on what you're going to do with your summer reading. And so out of that Poe book, I've given you 6 stories or 5 stories and 1 narrative poem, which is also still a story. And I've given you this document that you're going to fill out for each one of them. And so when you click this link, it should take you to this Google Slides presentation that is set up for you. And so you can just go file, make a copy of the entire presentation so that you have your own copy of the document to begin working in. And you're going to type your name here. And then for each slide, you've got the story title and it says story 1. And then you've got space where it says type here where you can add in some notes. And so the video about Gothic elements is going to talk to you about each of these 7 Gothic elements. And then as you're reading each story, notice how the story fits the typical characteristics of Gothic literature. And so I'm going to tell you things like typically the Gothic setting includes elements of decay and isolation. And so in your box next to setting and atmosphere, you're going to type in those elements of setting and atmosphere from this specific story that seem to fit the characteristics of Gothic literature, or the characteristics of the Gothic protagonist that seem to fit the main character in The Fall of the House of Usher, and so on. I'm requiring you to fill out at least 5 of these sections for each story, and so you can skip 2 for each one. Often you're going to have to skip Damsel in Distress because it's just not that element is just not present in all of the stories, and you can skip at least one other one. Try to fit your text within each box. This box will expand as you type in it. You can make the font size smaller if you need to in order to fit it in each box, but try to be concise. I'm not necessarily looking for you to have long commentary analysis, just specific examples from the story. And so that can be some sort of specific detail about the protagonist or the house and the way this character behaves. It may be a short quotation. Don't give me these big giant long quotations because those just aren't really useful to us. We're not going to use big giant quotations in our paper either, but keep it as specific as possible. And so hear me when I'm saying they don't have to be quotes, but they do need to be specific details from the story. If you do use quotes, you need to include page numbers. Notice that you've got 1 slide for each story. Now you do have to do all 6 stories, but for each story you can fill out 5 of these 7 boxes, okay? There are some written instructions here for you too that'll be on the document you have access to. I'm still maybe going to make some edits to this document before it's in its final form that you'll see, but it will be essentially the same. So read over those instructions carefully. Book 2 is Mythology by Edith Hamilton, and this is more like a reference book, encyclopedia. It is full of just information about Greek gods and goddesses and short stories about some of the figures, demigods, gods, and goddesses from ancient mythology. We will have a test very early on that covers mythology, anywhere from the second day of school to like the Monday of week 2, somewhere around that time. And you just need to memorize this information. If you're going to be a good reader of literature, you need to be familiar with mythology because it just gets mentioned a lot. And so I gave you lots of things to know that will be on that very first test. And so I gave you some page numbers here. So for the first one, the 12 Olympians and how they gained power. And you're going to find this info in part 1, which starts on page 17. You may have to search around for it a little bit. You can use the table of contents and the index at the back of this book to help you find specifics. Make sure you know their Greek and Roman names. The book tells you their Greek name, and then if they have a Roman name, it will be in parentheses right next to their Greek name in that opening section. Next, this is from the section of the book called The Lesser Gods. And again, you can use the index or table of contents. This is also in part 1 after the main Olympian section ends. And again, really make sure you're understanding the definitions. Who is this person? What are they known for? Etc. Flashcards are a great way to study for this. Also, down here, number 3, I want you to read these stories. And so the flower myths, and I gave you a page number, all 3 of those flower myths. Cupid and Psyche, Daedalus, and then the story of Hercules. And so those stories will also be on that initial test. And so when we start school in the fall, you'll have a test on this mythology, and then we'll do some work with these presentations you're creating for me. You will end up having to present at least a portion of what you create here. Quick note about plagiarism. You are not permitted to use any outside source other than the links I provided you for these videos. And so don't Google the stories, don't watch summary videos, don't pull quotes from websites, that kind of thing. Don't look at your friend's work on this assignment. I want this to be your own work, and try to make a good first impression. When we get back to school, last note before we finish up, I'm going to have you submit your presentation document, your slides document to Turnitin.com, and then we'll have that test on mythology pretty shortly thereafter.